Good morning and happy Friday. Welcome to the pre-application conference for the Scholarships for Opportunity and Results Act Academic Quality and Early Childhood Grants. My name is Rhonda Kardash. I am the Director of the Office of Public Charter School Financing and Support, and I am happy to see that so many people have joined us for the webinar today. A few things to let you guys know. Everyone is currently on mute. This is to prevent background noise during the webinar. The webinar will be sent out to everyone who was registered at the end of the webinar later today, and is being recorded and will also be posted on our website hopefully by Monday. We will be stopping throughout the presentation to answer questions. If you have questions at any time during the webinar, you may type those into the question box. And as I said, we'll pause briefly throughout the webinar to answer those questions as well as at the end. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the agenda for the webinar. We are going to go over what SOAR is and what the purpose of it is, a little bit of details about this, the Academic Quality and Early Childhood Grants. We're going to go over what is in the application and how to submit and how those applications will be evaluated, and some important dates for you guys to remember. There will also be time for question and answers, and you will receive the contact information of all of the Public Charter School Finance team. So we, again, are going over what the SOAR grant is and what the purpose of SOAR grant funding is, as well as specifically academic quality and early childhood grants. The Scholarships for Opportunity and Results Act, or the SOAR Act, is a federal law, and it authorizes funding for DC public charter schools to improve and expand quality public charter schools in the District of Columbia. So there's actually a three-sector federal funding approach. This also provides funding for DCPS and the voucher program. So equal amounts get allocated to DCPS, to OSSI for public charter schools, and for the voucher program. So this is provided to OSSI as a grant, and every year we have to submit an application describing how we're going to use the funds. Part of the SOAR Act law is that we solicit stakeholder feedback. So last fall, we solicited stakeholder feedback, and then we were able to submit our application on December 9th. And then we received our grant award notice, or our GAN, on May 25th of this year. So again, the overall purpose is to improve and expand quality public charter schools in the District of Columbia. And we have three impact areas in our application. One is to increase academic achievement and academic growth for DC public charter school students. One is to support improvement and expansion of high quality public charter schools. And one is to support DC families by making it easier to take advantage of school choice options. So you may have noticed that this year, one of the big differences in our SOAR Act grant is that the academic quality grant is now formula. Last year and the year prior, this was a competitive grant. We made this decision to ensure that all charter LEAs have access to funds, which is important because of the purpose of SOAR Act funding being to improve academics. When we solicited stakeholder feedback last fall, we sent out a survey and found that 79% of LEA respondents to this survey either agreed or strongly agreed that a substantial portion of these funds should be allocated on a per pupil basis. So based on the feedback that we received, we decided that the academic quality grant would be distributed on a formula basis with a base of $50,000 to each charter LEA, and the remainder of the amount that we had for academic quality would be distributed on a per pupil basis. And that is how you received the allocation for academic quality. So once again, the purpose of the academic quality grant is now providing formula-based funding to support eligible charter LEAs. And these funds are to be used for projects that have a direct impact on student achievement. This can be either a school-wide impact, or this can be a direct impact on specific subgroups of students. So the purpose of the Early Childhood Grant is to enhance the quality of preschool or pre-K programming, and those funds should be used to supplement and not supplant existing programs. The way that we allocate funds for the Early Childhood Grant is that we take the Title I Part A formula, and we rerun that with 3- and 4-year-olds included in the formula, and we take the difference. So the amount that an LEA would have received had 3- and 4-year-olds been run in that formula, and that's how we come up with the allocation. And this grant is designed to assist schools with implementing activities to support school readiness, including the development of literacy and mathematics skills. So we're going to go into a little bit about the grant details, including the source of funding, the amount of your awards, the eligibility for these grants, and what kinds of expenses are allowable. So on this slide, you will see the citation of the law in which our funding comes from. So you received an email on July 7th, and included in that email were all of your allocations as well as your program contact. So rather than having one person from Public Charter School Financing administer this entire grant, because every single LEA that was open in school year 15-16 is eligible for the academic quality allocation. We have specific LEAs have a specific program contact. You will also be able to find your allocations in EGMS on the allocation page, and we will get to that when we open up the application. So again, for the academic quality grant, all charter LEAs who were open and serving students during the 15-16 school year, including early childhood and adult education charter LEAs, are eligible to submit project proposals. And for the early childhood grant, any charter LEA who were open and serving students during the 15-16 school year and met the following criteria. So this was for anyone who had 40% of their population being 3- and 4-year-olds in a pre-K program, and that met the Title I poverty threshold. So for allowable expenses, as most of you know, our funds are on a reimbursement basis. and they can only be used for allowable grant project expenditures. So the expenditures have to take place during the grant period, and they have to be things that are in your application, and they meet the requirements of the permissible uses of federal funds. And that is going to be found in EDGAR, as well as the Uniform Grant Guidance, which is CFR Part 200. And the costs have to meet the purpose of the grant. So they have to support projects that identify or that address the needs that are in your needs assessment. So we're going to dive into the application. We're going to go through a little bit about what is in the application, then we're actually going to open up the application and walk through it a little bit. Before we get into that, I'm going to pause for a second. If there are any questions, again, please type those into the question box. Okay, so I'm not currently seeing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. So one of the big things that you guys need to know is that the application deadline is August 4th at 3:00 p.m. That is a hard deadline. Anyone who has not put in their application by August 4th at 3 p.m. will have their funds reallocated to eligible LEAs that met that deadline. So one of the things that I tell people every time we have an application is to try to make sure that you submit early. Those applications are going to be submitted through our Enterprise Grants Management System, or EGMS, which most of you I'm sure are familiar with. And there is a link here for more information about that system. Once again, avoid last-minute submission issues by submitting early. Those applications are due on August 4th by 3 p.m. And that 3 p.m. deadline ensures that the EGMS help desk staff are available to help anyone who has any issues submitting. And again, that deadline is firm to ensure equity. There are not going to be any exceptions made, so please make sure that you submit by August 4th at 3 p.m. The EGMS application has all of the sections that are listed. We also call them tabs because they do look like tabs within the EGMS system. So there's going to be a general information tab, and again, we're going to go through this and then we're actually going to open up the application and take a look at it. But on the general information tab, you can find general information about the grants. This section is completely informational. There's nothing for you guys to complete on this tab. For the contact information, you're going to provide information for your head of organization, your grant contact, and your fiscal contact. If you can also provide contact information for the person responsible for submitting the application if that person is different than your grant contact. So this is a tab that you are going to fill out information for. There is an information tab where you are going to enter a brief project description. This should be a very high-level overview of your scope and proposed outcomes. We suggest that it's only about a paragraph, maybe 2 to 3 sentences, so very, very high level. Since this is a formula grant, there is a funding distribution tab, which is completely informational. There are no fields for you to complete. And then there is the Allocations tab, and on this tab you will see your separate allocation for academic quality as well as for early childhood. This will also be the tab on which you select a drawdown schedule. So it will be either monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly. And you will select which of those you intend to submit with for reimbursements. The needs assessment and narrative are going to be the meat and potatoes of your application. This is going to be where you show what your need is and describe what your project is and put in a theory of action. So for the needs assessment, and we'll go into the application so you can see exactly what it looks like, you're going to select via radio button which different data sources you use, and then you're going to write in a paragraph form, describe the data and link that to what your needs are, or what you determined your needs are. You're also going to have a section where you describe exactly what your project is and how that meets your needs. And then there is a section for a theory of action. And that is going to be your if, then, because statement, where you are saying, if we do these activities, then we expect this result. And the because part of that is linking it to research. So if I do this thing, then I expect to see this happen because research says this. And you will notice that one of the other differences in the formula grants for this year is that we have done away with the logic model for the formula grant, and we'll go into, there is a performance measures document to take the place of that, and you are going to complete one of those per allocation and upload it. And again, when we go into the actual application, we'll take a look at that document. So please make sure to make a clear link between the data, the needs, the project, and your research-based strategies. And because there are limits on characters in EGMS, make sure that you are detailed and yet concise. So the next section of the application will be your detailed planning expenditures. There will be a section where you summarize the planned use of funds and align that with the project, and then you'll have your itemized budget. And the itemized budget is where you're going to insert the line items that you plan to purchase or that you plan to spend money on. And these should be aligned with your summary of planned expenditures. The budget summary is a tab in EGMS that is automatically populated with the information that you put in those itemized expenditure tabs. There is a supporting documentation tab. There is no required supporting documentation in your initial submission of this application. When you are awarded your funds, this section of the application is used for amendment requests. We require a letter of rationale when you submit an amendment explaining why you need an amendment and what funds are being moved where. And so we have a supporting documentation tab for that letter to be uploaded if you make an amendment later. For your first submission, there's no required documents to be uploaded to this tab. We have the assurances tab. You should definitely read all of your program-specific assurances and then check the box at the top to certify that you have read them, understood them, and plan to comply with them. And please make sure to click on Save Page. If you do not click on Save Page, then it doesn't register that you have checked the box at the top. After those assurances have been submitted, the Assurance Agreement Summary tab, and again, we'll look at that, will show the date that you submitted those program-specific assurances, the day that you agreed to those. This page will also display whether your organization has submitted the central data collection common assurances. It is very important that you have filled out the central data collection common assurances, or else your GAN will not be released. So again, submissions are due by 3 p.m. on August 4th. You're going to need to run your consistency check to lock the application. The submit button for this application will no longer be available after 3 p.m. on August 4th. And if you do not submit by 3 p.m. on August 4th, we will reallocate the funds to the people who have submitted by 3 p.m. So please start submitting earlier in the day or the day before. The two other tabs that are in your application are the application print and the application history. Application print is available if you need a hard copy for some reason, but please know that EGMS only generates PDFs and the hard copies once per hour at the top of the hour. So if you submit now, it's 10:20, if you were to ask for that or request the print now, you would not be able to go in and access that until 11 o'clock. For the application history, that is available for you to see any actions that involving your application that have happened. So before we get into the evaluation of these applications, I'm going to stop to see if there are any questions. And I'm also going to open up an application in EGMS so that we can take a look at the actual application. So I see one question asking, are there two separate proposals required for academic quality and early childhood, and also are there two applications required? There is only one application. It's got both allocations in it. We expect to see that if you have an early childhood allocation, that you are spending at least that amount on early childhood. But there's only one application that you're going to be filling out. There will, however, be two of those performance agreement documents. You will have to fill out two tables, but that's the only extra thing that you will have to do if you have both allocations. And then I have someone else asking, if we intend to implement a project that helps all low readers, will we be required to report on subgroups on our reports to OSSE? Your reports to OSSE are going to be based on your actions and your goals, which we'll talk about when I get to that performance agreement document. The performance measure template, I have another question asking, will we have a chance to go through the performance measures template? We are going to go through that as soon as I get into the application. And when we get to that, I'll talk to you a little bit about how that document relates to your performance agreement, which you will have a performance agreement that is derived from that document, and that is also what you report on, is what you put in your performance measures template. So this application is in our test site, so I'm going to apologize in advance if this moves a little more slowly than regular EGMS. But you can see that we're on the General Information tab. Again, this is a tab where there is nothing for you to fill out. It is just some general information about the grant. On the Contact Information tab, this is the first tab that you are actually going to fill out. And you can see that this is where you're going to fill out the head of school, the grants contact, the fiscal contact, and if you would like to designate someone to receive information on a particular grant that is different than the grant contact listed above, you can also put them in as well. So only the head of school or authorized representatives receive email notifications So they do not have to be included in the application approval or disapproval email addresses, but if you want other people to be notified when your application is approved or sent back for changes, then you would place their email address in this section here. On the Information tab, again, you can see that this is where you will put a 1 paragraph, 3 to 4 sentences, very high-level overview of what you plan to do. So this may be where you say that you are going to put in a professional development program for teachers on literacy instruction, and that might be what your whole program is, and you would describe that here, very high level. The Funding Distribution tab, again, this is informational purposes only, but this is going to talk about current year funds, prior year funds, and in this particular grant, you should only see current year funds. On the Allocations tab, this is going to be where you can see the breakdown of what you have between the two allocations. If you have two, there should be the academic quality allocation, and then if you receive an early childhood allocation, that would be listed separately here, just as a reminder for you of what the two allocations are. On this tab, this is where you guys are going to select whether you intend to submit reimbursements on a monthly basis, on a bi-monthly basis, or on a quarterly basis. Just so you guys know, if you select monthly on here, public charter school financing staff is not going to ding you if you do not submit monthly. We actually have a requirement on our SOAR grants that halfway through the grant you have drawn down 40% of your funds, and that's what we're going to be looking at. So we are not going to come after you if you do not stick to whichever one you choose, but you do have to choose one. So this is going to be the meat and potatoes of your grant. This is the Needs Assessment and Narrative tab. So again, you are going to be choosing which kind of quantitative data sources and which kind of qualitative data sources you used when you performed a needs assessment to decide what the needs at your school are. And then right here, you are going to substantiate the need for your project. So you're going to talk about the data that you checked in the section above that and describe how your needs assessment showed that these were your needs. So this data showed these needs, and you're going to describe what those needs are and how your project is going to add to providing high quality education. So this is where you should be specific about what your data was and what your data showed. Underneath that, you are going to describe your project and activities. Those activities should be research-based, and there should be a clear link between the project that you're doing and what your needs were from your needs assessment. If you are receiving both an academic quality and early childhood education, you should make sure that your project is addressing the needs of if you receive both, you should make sure that it's specifically talking about how you're going to address the needs of the early childhood students with the early childhood allocation. If you choose to use both of those allocations for early childhood, that's fine, but we do need to specifically see if you're receiving that early childhood allocation that you are indeed addressing needs of those students. And then for the theory of action, again, this is an if, then, because statement. This should be a statement showing that if you do these activities, then you expect to see these results, and you expect to see those results because research shows this. So if I do this thing, then I expect to see these results because research says this. And then we're going to have this performance measures table. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this to show you what it looks like, and we'll get into that. While I am pulling that up, I see that a few more questions came in. So someone is saying, if we want to provide math and literacy support for pre-K and 1 through 6, are there 2 performance frameworks? I think you're asking about this performance goal template, and we're going to get into that in just a second. Someone else is asking, is it possible to only have allocated for 1 program instead of 2? Most people do only have allocated funds for 1 program. The early childhood is very specific for eligibility. Earlier in the webinar, we discussed the eligibility for early childhood being that 40% of your population is 3- and 4-year-olds, and you also meet the Title I threshold of the Title I poverty threshold. But what we did is we were trying to reduce burden on LEAs by combining both of these formula grants into 1 application. So that the people who do receive 2 allocations are still only filling out 1 application. So another question is, where can we access the PDF that lists the schools and allocations? That was sent to you in an email on July 7th. It is also listed on our website. It's been posted on our website. And I can show that at the end, and I will also send out a link to where that is located, as well as where this webinar will be posted in the email that's sent out with the presentation. Someone is asking, in the needs assessment, do we have to have both qualitative and quantitative data sources, or can we have one or the other? Or both? You can have one or the other or both, but you do need to have some data sources for your needs assessment. So we expect to see at least a few things checked. Those could be 2 or 3 only qualitative. Those could be 2 or 3 only quantitative. It could be a mix. You could have used more than 2 or 3, but we do expect to see that you are using some data to do your needs assessment. And then someone is asking about sharing information. Can you share some information about the requirements for research-based information to be linked to the grant need? And I'm not exactly sure the requirements for research-based information. You should have it should be linked to research. I'm not sure what you mean by requirements for research. Like your project should be, the activities should be research-based in that research has shown that they're effective in increasing academic achievement or in solving the root cause of what you're finding your need to be. Okay, so we're going to move on and look at the performance goal template. The performance goal template, again, there's a link to that in the application. It will bring this up. There are some very good directions at the top of this, and as we scroll down, you can see that this is what is expected for anyone who's receiving an academic quality allocation. There is a section for your project summary. This can easily be the same exact summary that you put in your brief project description. It should be a high-level overview of what your program is that you plan on doing with these funds. Then there's a section for your project goal. This is going to be a very high-level goal. And then you're going to have 2 project objectives. And the project objectives should be, they could be the same objective because one is for the first 6 months of the grant and one is for the second 6 months of the grant. So, but the objective should be SMART. So you can see up here, it should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based for your project. And this is replacing the logic model. So we should have 3 to 5 activities that you place in here for each of the 6-month periods of the grant. And for each of those activities, you should also be putting a completion date. Now, this does not need to be an exact date. It does not need to be December 13th of 2017. It can be that you expect this to be completed sometime in the month of December. The completion date could be that you expect it sometime in November to December. But we are asking, since this is only a 1-year grant, and because this is only a 6-month period, that you have the completion date be no more than a 2-month span. The other thing that you're going to be placing in here is the evidence of completion. So if you say that your project is to deliver 3 professional development sessions to teachers, for example, it could be that your evidence of completion could be the professional development calendar, as well as an agenda and a sign-in sheet showing that you had the professional development and that teachers were present for the professional development. But what kinds of things can we expect to see if we were to come monitor you to prove that that activity occurred? And you are going to do 3 to 5 activities for the first 6 months of the grant period and 3 to 5 activities for the final 6 months of the grant activity. And if you receive an early childhood allocation, then you are going to do a second performance template. And it's going to be exactly the same. You're going to have your summary, your goal, your objective, your activities, the completion date, and the evidence of completion. And again, this is replacing the logic model for this, and these items are specifically going to be taken and transferred into the performance agreement that we do. And then that is going to be the basis on which, if you are monitored, that we monitor you. That is also going to be what you report on. So you're going to report, you'll have 2 reports, one at the end of the first 6-month period and one at the end of the second 6-month period. And you're going to be talking about in that report whether you met your objective and whether your activities were completed. So I'm going to stop because I know that this is new, because I see some questions. I have one person asking if schools are expected to use 2016 to 2017 park data, or if it's expected to use the year prior. You can use whatever data you have. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, it's not required that you use park data. If you have interim assessment data, you could use that. But whatever is the most recent data that you are using for your needs assessments. I know that most schools conduct needs assessments over the summer in order to prepare for the upcoming school year. So you're going to be using whatever data that you are using at your school level to conduct your needs assessment. Someone is asking if, given that this is a formula grant, is receipt assured? Receipt is assured provided that you apply by the deadline. If you do not apply by the deadline, then we will reallocate those funds. If you do apply by the deadline, we will work with you if there are any things that need to be corrected within your application. Someone would like me to repeat what an if, then, because statement is. If, then, because is if I do these activities, then I expect to see these results because research shows that they work. Like this research shows that they work. Other OSSI grants ask that the research cited be no more than 5 years old. And someone is saying that the definitive studies about early childhood are more than 5 years old. Yes, you can use research that is older than 5 years in this particular grant, provided that it is there more than one study, I guess. If there's more than one study that shows something, it can be older research. Someone is saying some federal grants require their specific research be cited to ensure fidelity in the grant. I'm not sure I understand what the question is. Someone is asking what I mean when I say high level. So a high level goal as opposed to a SMART goal for your objective, the high level goal may be that we will increase academic literacy scores. We will increase academic achievement in mathematics, for example. We will increase increase academic achievement at our school. Maybe it's just very, very high level overview of what we intend to do. The more specific might be that we will increase PARCC scores in mathematics by 5% in a specific year. That's more detailed and more of a SMART goal, whereas a high level goal would be we plan to increase academic achievement. Very high level. Can we use one objective for both 6-month periods? Yes, you may. Someone's saying that this is much better than a logic model. Thank you. We are constantly trying to make things better. The logic models are actually required by the Department of Education, but because this is a formula grant, we tried to make it easier and make it so that it was more aligned with the performance agreement that we will attach this to. If we are academic quality and early childhood, is the expectation that we do 2 different projects? When we write the project description, should it explain both projects? So if you are both academic quality and early childhood, the expectation is not necessarily that you do 2 projects, although you may. There are some of our early childhood recipients that only serve early childhood. So because 40% of your population must be early 3- and 4-year-olds in order to receive the grant, the expectation is that you have a high number of early childhood students. So you could possibly be doing one project, but the expectation is that at least part of your project, at least the part that you are receiving an early childhood allocation for, does touch on those early childhood students. So if, for example, you were pre-K through first grade and your entire project, and you received both allocations and your entire project only focused on your first graders, we would send that back to you. So it could be one project. It could be that you are doing professional development for all of your teachers, including those preschool and pre-K teachers. And in that case, we would try to see if around the same percent of your teachers were around the same percent of your total allocation that your early childhood allocation is. We just want to make sure that at least the early childhood funds are being directed towards the early childhood students. When you write your project description, just ensure that you are touching on what you are doing for the early childhood students. If you're doing one project that's enhancing your entire program or your entire school, make sure that you include in there how that also benefits the early childhood students. So I have someone asking if there's a section of the application that's not sufficient, will we contact you to correct or to provide more detail? I'm going to get into how it's evaluated after we get past this early childhood grant performance measure, or early childhood and academic quality grant performance measures template. We'll talk a little bit about how we will evaluate, and hopefully I will answer your question then. So I'm going to get into the next person's question as well. Someone said that they noticed that EGMS has the date of 8/4/2017 to 9/30/2017 for the grant period. It is technically correct for this particular application, but that's because you will have to do a once 9/30, which is the end of our fiscal year, passes, you will have until November 15th to submit a reimbursement request, and then you will fill out a continuation application, which will only consist of a budget, basically, and that you will receive a new grant award notification for the remainder of the actual grant period. The grant period, the entire grant period for academic quality and early childhood is 1 year. So it's going to be August 4th of 2017 through August 4th of 2018. So I'm going to go back into our presentation and talk about the evaluation of these applications. So we're going to have an internal review panel. So this would be public charter school financing and support staff will assess the quality of each of the applications, and we will actually have a rubric that we look at. That rubric will be made available to you if you're if for some reason there is something that is not acceptable in your application, we will send it back to you, and there will be a rubric and there will be detailed notes on exactly what you need to do to make the application acceptable. And again, so we will send detailed notes on anything that is missing, or if, for example, you put in a cost that is in the wrong location, or possibly in the is not an allowable cost, we will go ahead and send that back and give you detailed notes on exactly what you need to do in order for us to accept the application. So some important dates are that this application is going to be due, again, August 4th by 3 p.m. Please, please, please submit earlier than that to avoid technical difficulties because the submit button disappears after 3 p.m. And if you do not submit your application by 3 p.m. on August 4th, we will reallocate those funds to people who have. The initial reviews on our end, we intend to have them completed by August 18th of 2017. And again, your full grant period is going to be August 4th through August 3rd of 2018. Once again, you will notice that the grant period in EGMS currently does say August 4th through September 30th. That has to do with the end of our fiscal year on September 30th. Once that is complete and over with, and you'll have till November 15th to submit your reimbursements for any costs that were obligated in the grant period from August 4th through September 30th. And once those reimbursements are received, we will close out this fiscal year portion of the grant and open a continuation application. The continuation applications are, we've tried to make them as simple as possible, so it really is just that you are putting in what you haven't spent in your budget and maybe putting in the same project description from before, just so that we are ensuring that you are filling out a continuation application for the proper grant. So I'm going to take some time for question and answers. I did not go through the budget portion online of the grant. If anyone would like me to, I am happy to do that, but we were running out of time and I wanted to make sure we got to everything. The budget section is the same as any other grant in EGMS, but I'm happy to do that if anyone wants me to. I do have a few questions. One is, are there going to be regular narrative reports due for this grant, or just the financial budget reimbursements? There will be two reports that are due. They will have narrative portions, and it will be, again, on the information that you are providing within that performance measures template that we will be transferring to a performance agreement. So you will be reporting on what things you have completed, whether or not you had any challenges completing them, and this is also an opportunity, since they're only due every 6 months, for you to let us know if there are any technical assistance needs that we can meet for you to help you be successful in your grant. Someone is asking if there is a minimum required that must be expensed prior to the closing of the September 30th date. There will not be a minimum expense required prior to September 30th. However, by 6 months into the grant, so halfway through, you should have drawn down 40% of your funds. That is the only drawdown requirement in this grant, is that halfway through that you have obligated and drawn down 40% of your funds. When will schools be notified on the award? I will go back. The initial reviews are to be completed by August 18th, 2017. As soon as your review is complete, you will get a notification on whether or not it has been fully accepted or whether you have some corrections to make before, so that you can resubmit. I am going to put this up on your screen. This is your contact information. Again, your program contact, your specific program contact who was always, I mean, we're all always happy to answer questions, but your specific program contact who will be in contact with you about different things that go on with the grant is listed on that allocation sheet that you received on July 7th. They are, that allocation sheet is also up on our website. I will send a link out when I send out the slide deck from this presentation, and their contact information is in here. I would also like to point out that the EGMS Help Desk contact information is in here. If you run into any sort of technical difficulties with the application, that could be that you get an error message, or that something is, if something within the system is not working, please reach out to the EGMS Help Desk. They are very helpful. They are very responsive, and they can help you with any technical questions you may have. If you have any programmatic questions, things like, I'm thinking about doing this cost, is it allowable, or I am not sure what you meant when you asked for this particular item, please reach out to the Office of Public Charter School Financing and Support staff, and we will go ahead and answer any questions that you have about the program or the content of the application. So there is about 4 more minutes before 11. I don't see any questions right now, but I'm going to go ahead and remain on the line. I hope that you have gotten a lot out of this webinar. I hope that you got a lot of your questions answered. I want to thank you all for attending for an hour out of your day. I know it's very dense information, but with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude the webinar, although I will remain on the line for the next 5 or so minutes in case anyone else can think of any questions that they may have. If not, I am giving you back 4 minutes of your day, and I hope you have a lovely Friday and a lovely weekend. I have someone asking me if I will make the webinar PowerPoint available via email. I am going to send out the slides as well as the link to our website where the allocations are, and I am also this is being recorded, so the recorded webinar will be posted on our website sometime hopefully before Monday. Again, I'm going to stand line for a few minutes. I see several of you are leaving. I want to thank you again for your time. Again, I hope you got a lot out of this. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. So once again, thank you for your time. Have a fabulous weekend. I wish you all the luck. Reach out to me with any questions you might have, and have a great rest of your day.